All right, Jody, we are live. Thanks for joining today's conversation to talk about your journey of going from WordPress to Webflow, the journey of building kind of this capability internally around like how to take control of your web authoring experience and just like how to kind of pair with an outside organization, how to pair with an agency. So
To
yeah,
be
I
them.
what's that?
I was said happy to be here, so thank you
Yeah.
for having.
Awesome. Great. Well, yeah, maybe just we'll start off with a quick introduction. You know, who are you? Who is FloQast? We'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, so Jody Glazer, I am senior director of senior director of brand marketing at FloQast. So I run basically all of the content and creative across the whole company. Until recently, I also managed the website, but we luckily hired a head of web a few months back, and he came right in the middle of this migration. So, which was great to have him, and now he's moving the website forward. Um, and who is FloQast? So, FloQast is an accounting transformation platform. We're the leader in accounting AI agents. So, what does that mean? Basically, we automate workflows, allowing accounting and finance teams to really move from being preparers to being reviewers. So basically, finance and accounting teams in small, medium, large enterprise companies can really free up their time, be more strategic, let our platform do the kind of the tedious work for them. So that's who we are, kind of in simple terms.
Amazing. And like, everyone's talking about AI agents and like, how long have you guys been at this?
Well, so FloQast has been around for a while, and we started as kind of a closed management platform, and then we moved into kind of multi products, compliance, and we just launched our AI agents right at the time of the website launch. So, and in fact, we could talk about that in a minute, but we launched the website to make sure that it was launched before our AI agents launch in March.
Geez. Well, that's like a whole bunch of stuff happening all at once.
Yep.
Um, yeah, and I think it's definitely a really kind of interesting time in software where it's not just about how to build tools around information, but how to be able to build tools around knowledge. And it's awesome to hear that you guys are kind of right there within that mix.
Yeah, it's an exciting time, and we're really the first kind of accounting platform to have the AI agents, and so it's really exciting to see kind of the future of this.
Amazing. As you have been thinking about what you're trying to do on the web and just like as all this stuff is changing, what was like the driver that kind of led up to this project? Like, all right, you guys, yeah, if you have a new product that's coming out, why not just like what was sort of the drum beat that was kind of leading up to like, okay, we got to do something, we got to, do something different.
Yeah, so we were on WordPress, and I've used WordPress many times in the past at different companies. But our WordPress instance was very custom. It was Um, it's a great product, but it was really difficult for people like me who is not, I'm not a coder, not a developer. I could go in and make simple changes, but I couldn't make um, really, I couldn't build new pages. We didn't have a lot of flexibility. And so about a year ago, we started on looking at two things at once, which was a little crazy. One was a rebrand. We wanted to rebrand not the logo, but the look and feel of the company. So we started a rebrand project, and at the same time, we said, we want to get away from our WordPress instance. Doesn't allow, it's too custom. It's not flexible enough. It pretty much makes everything we do need development work. So we said, this is the right time to move to a new platform. We'll do a rebrand. We'll launch the rebrand on a new platform. Let's do it all at once. So
Yeah.
we started looking at Webflow and said, I think that's the right solution for us.
Yeah, I think it's pretty common where it's like, okay, we've got to go and change sort of like how you're telling the story, right? As well as like what the story is in and of itself. And with it sounds like where the product was going, you really needed to be able to have the marketing be able to be out ahead of that story a bit.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Exactly. And we wanted to look, we wanted to, we've been moving up market, focusing on enterprise companies, and we really wanted our brand to showcase that and really kind of tell a better story.
yeah. And let's maybe start at the end. All right. So we'll fast forward all of this. And you'd been working, like there's a lot of work, and then all of a sudden, like you had this message that came through and said, "Hey, not let's not launch next week. Let's launch a few days early." So, like, what was that, and how did you feel about it, and then what sort of happened?
Yeah. So the launch of the AI agents was on a Tuesday. And originally we were going to launch on Monday. And I think people started getting concerned. Well, what if things go wrong? We really want to make sure that everything is in place. So we said, okay, let's launch on Friday. That gives us some buffer. And so, of course, my first thinking is, okay, great, we're going to have to work all weekend. Um, it's going to be tough on a Friday and then going into the weekend. And actually, that is not what happened. We did not have to work over the weekend, which was shocking.
Amazing. And like, what? So you launched, and what happened?
So we launched, and there's always things that you're kind of monitoring for, and I've launched websites before, and there's bugs, and there's things that you're just having to deal with. Um, there were minor things on Friday that we were kind of having to deal with, but they were minor. And then went into the weekend and I kept checking my Slack messages and looking at the website to make sure it was still there. And everything was great. We didn't have any, no big issues, no red flags. Um, we went into Monday and the launch and everything went smoothly. So,
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, it was kind of like we were getting some DNS things sort of cleaned up on a Friday, and
yep.
then got it all configured, and then we were like, "All right, well, let's head off
Yeah.
for the week." And we were we were around as well. We were kind of like, right, typically for us, I was talking with um, someone else about this story, and they were like, "Oh, well, that means that we can launch on Friday." And I was like, "I mean, you can, but it's not. It wasn't like the thing we were just like set out for. I mean, I think within this project, you still potentially we were going to have like an extra couple of days. We were actually, bringing this in early,
Yep.
and what were the last like, let's say 2 weeks like, kind of leading up to how did you feel comfortable saying like, yeah, let's get this launched on a Friday?
Yeah. So, I mean, us working with your team, we were really one team. We had a Slack channel going between all of us. We were on there constantly. We were troubleshooting, because there's always things the last couple weeks that you're doing. I had an internal team of testers, so I had this big spreadsheet, all the pages, and assigning people. Here's what you're testing. We're making changes. And so it was just there was a lot of work leading up to those, kind of to the launch of just working together to make sure that everything was smooth and your team was amazing. We just, everyone knew this is the priority. This is the launch date. We're gonna make it happen.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And I just remember, I mean, again, like I wanted to be able to talk with you today because it was such just like an incredible kind of partnership, and the way that you structured your team was fantastic. Just as you said, we were really marching together as one team. I know from our standpoint, those last 2 weeks, it was not necessarily like the easy part, but it was more like it was just like, yep, we just knew what we were chipping away at. And we had, you know, final items that we were tracking in, ClickUp and kind of going back and forth on. And so when the news came through, like, hey, let's launch a couple of days earlier, like, yep, we've got all of our critical items addressed. we're good to go. Let's move into cutoff. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
We were
but
all on the same page, which was good.
yeah. Backing up, like, I'd love to be able to, just for people that are out there and kind of thinking about like going through this process. One, there was a brand project within this, and you guys had kicked that off. You guys had been able to do, a lot of this work. And for, context here, when we say we worked as a blended team, there was a good bit of like design work you guys had done. There was lots of like parts and pieces. So just talk with me about like what were those parts and pieces, and what did that look like even before we went into starting to think about replatforming?
Yeah. So the rebrand was a huge project that we started. I think we decided to rebrand about a year ago. It was probably in May.
Okay.
And we just started to, kind of look at our designs and start with that. And then I think we really kind of engaged with Webflow and then your team. I don't think it was until November or December. I think
Mm.
that was about the timing. And then we really started to take our designs and say, how do we want this to work on a website?
Yep.
Um, so we started to do brand guidelines and designs of the kind of the page. And we had to go through, I mean, we had a lot of spreadsheets of here's all the content on the website. Here's what we want to move over to the new platform because we didn't want to bring every single old page over. So it was really doing an audit of what do we want to, you know, move over. Everything needed to be redesigned in the new template. And then we also looked at what content needs to change because we didn't want to take old stale content and not kind of revisit it. So
Mhm.
we worked internally with product marketing and teams to really say, okay, what is the fresh content that we want to kind of redo? So it was redoing the content, redoing the design, and then engaging with your team. And you had a designer and kind of my designer and your designer worked together and kind of finalized all the templates and components and you know
Yeah. Yeah.
everything
And I
there.
think that, there's, I mean, like your team, you're not running a brand agency, right? Like you're not doing this all the time. And I think there was a lot of like really good, um, kind of elements that were there. It was like, okay, this has got to be the vision, but it's like, now how do you go through and take that vision and create it into a system? And that's one of the things that I think we were able to pair on, where let y'all be um, the sort of guiding light on what we need to be able to do, and then saying, okay, well, how do we need to think about what's the type ratios here? Like it's almost sort of the math behind, and it's like quite literally is sometimes the math around like breakpoints, type ratios, you know, sizing of spacing, like all of those types of things. And then on the flip side of that, the story itself. And so looking at a little bit of, of an edit. Stephen King had said to write is human, to edit is divine.
Oh,
I almost think that it's to flip that. It's like to write is AI and then to edit is human. That's kind of like where we're
yeah,
moving over to. But it was great to be able to just have, again, a fantastic palette of work to be able to kind of go in and be like, yep, let's more like tighten some of this. And that was really probably one of the first things we did. And then around the content audit, you said you were going through. I was looking at what we're going to move over as is, what we're going to remove, what we're going to edit, and what we need to be able to create new.
yeah.
One of the things that I loved hearing from you was, what was one of the outcomes? You'd said you got a note from one of the board members, and I don't know, or like maybe just feedback internally. Like how was it received? Not just the site itself, but like within the company in general.
Yeah, actually, I was shocked. I mean, I've gone through a bunch of rebrands and websites, and we've never had the kind of amazing feedback we had. We did have a board member basically say, "I don't have any feedback. Like this is great." People were really excited about the rebrand in general. They really like it. And then just the website, the functionality, the navigation, the look and feel, just everything. I'm so used to getting a lot of, you know, feedback where people have their opinions and they want to make changes. I mean, we have feedback like, oh, what about adding this? Or we need, nothing. It was really positive, which just felt good for the whole team.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that's what you want. Like you want to be able to like, you know, sail through launch and then be able to get a good reaction internally. And the prep for this, I mean, you had mentioned, all right, starting to get a little bit of that vision together. There's also that work on kind of redefining the customer, and having like that really good customer understanding. That's a lot of the work that we'll do with our CX program, and I think you'd worked with Zane on that. Right? So
Yeah.
everyone's talking now about like conversion rate optimization, and that's really great post launch. I'd love to hear about what you're thinking about there, but even kind of pre-launch, having the that customer profile in mind, understanding some of like the user journeys. What did you learn about your customer even before we got into the browser? And how was that kind of something that helped to guide us?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was there was some kind of internal conversations and just because our target audience is, accounting and finance teams. But you do have different levels. You have the CFO, you have the controller, you have the accounting managers. And so, just uh, really keeping all of them in mind and talking internally to more of the experts of, who know the audience. So our company one of our kind of taglines is by accountants for accountants. So 80% of our sales force or frontline workers were accountants in their previous lives. And so they understand our target audience. And so very helpful to have them kind of say, this is what um, how we would want the website to be, right? So looking internally. And then you mentioned Zane. Zane was amazing to work with because we would come to the table and say, here's the navigation that we're thinking, or here's the page setup. And he would, kind of listen to us and say, well, from our expertise, here's what we would recommend. And we just had multiple workshops kind of going through it, talking about what, from our vantage point and from his expertise. And I think we really netted out in a really good spot.
Yeah. And to be clear, like it wasn't necessary. I would say that the other thing that you guys were able to bring is that those customer insights, and gave our team something to be able to sort of distill down so that we could understand, okay, what's the job to be done for the CFO, for the controller, for, each one of these segment groups. And then also, how does that line up to an enterprise sales cycle? Who's going to be the champion? Who's going to be the user? Who's going to be the signature? Who's going to be who's going to fund this? Like all of those, it's sort of like this whole matrix that you have to start to think about. And I think that a lot of the pre work that you guys had been putting together really helped us to be able to bring back those parts around like, okay, for our champion, this is the type of content and page that we need to have so that they can understand and kind of make that value pitch to their internal buyer. And then, that internal buyer needs to understand these five things. So kind of taking this big mission that you guys are looking to kind of spread out there in the world and then breaking that down into, not even just like the what people do on a day-to-day basis, but like how does, an organization start to learn about what y'all are trying to do.
Yeah, and the website is so critical to that because it's really, kind of the first entry into, to the company itself. I
Yeah.
mean, a lot of people now do their research on their own, right?
Yeah.
They come to the website, they want to be able to um, figure out what does the company do? What are the products? What are the stories that other people are telling about the company? And so just getting the content and the journey right on the website is just so important.
Yeah. And what are you seeing? This is something I didn't ask you about beforehand, so I really don't know. What are you seeing around search right now? Because search is changing. A lot of search isn't happening necessarily around search results. We're getting like sort of AI search results and sort of like we're seeing some people that are getting pushed down the funnel a little bit more. So they're less around kind of like early search. Maybe they've been informed and then they're using the site for validation. Broad picture, what are you seeing as it relates to search and the role of the site?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I don't actually manage the day-to-day website anymore. So our head of web probably is looking at the details a little bit more. But I did just hire on my team another copywriter that's going to be focused on SEO and really making sure that our website is optimized for search and looking at, the search trends have changed. I think you alluded to that, and the way that search works is just it's been changing over time.
Yeah.
And so I've hired someone to really focus on that to make sure that everything is optimized for it. We write, SEO blogs to make sure that we're hitting on the right content, but and the keywords. But there's just so many little nuances um, that we need to really evaluate it. And usually when you change from one website to another, your SEO does take a hit.
Mhm.
And so you have to kind of build it back up. And so that's what we're doing right now.
Yeah. And for this project, I think we were also looking at kind of some of those question answer pairs. So at least trying to make sure that like while questions are going to happen out there in, either traditional search or AI search, like
Yeah.
thinking it's funny to think about traditional search as just like what Google is,
Yeah.
um, but having some of those question answer pairs and then also having that malleability so that as you have a non-technical author that is coming on board and that can jump into Webflow and then be able to start to make all of those little optimizations and updates that have to happen. I think that's really the key that we're seeing around the malleability and speed is the big thing, because there's no one answer right now. Like it's all changing so quickly.
Yeah, and that was one of our reasons for moving to Webflow is we needed to be able to move quickly. We needed to be flexible. We needed to be able to go in and easily change things. And so that was a big goal of ours.
What did you mentioned wanted to have like this ownership of it of the platform itself. How did you build that knowledge over the course of the project? Because I mean it was 101 days start to finish. And it's like, which is also really fast. And that was not like that was from a brand, like there was brand ideas and then there was like the launch. And then within that period, getting all that together and becoming really comfortable with a whole platform where you guys have taken it over. Right. So, I mean, we've like the keys are in your hands. So what was that process like of kind of building that internal knowledge around the capacity to own the site?
Yeah, so I have to say I never worked in Webflow at all. And a few of us on the team had not.
Yeah.
So that was a little scary at first. So kind of did a couple things. Our technical folks did a lot of the training, kind of the Webflow training, to make sure that they were comfortable with the tools and just more of the technical side of the website. Um, and I did a little bit of that as well. We'd meet with Webflow. And then, to be honest, a lot of it happened just at the end as we got into Webflow. So your team was really good about, they would build a template or a page. And then we had a whole list of pages that my team had to build. So,
Yeah.
we had these templates, we had some components, and we had to actually, and we knew what the content for the page needed to be. And so we needed to take that content, build it in Webflow. And your team really helped us. We did some workshops and they basically just said, here's what you do. And, we kind of building it ourselves and we'd ask a billion questions. I asked a billion questions. I think the Slack channel was going crazy with me saying, wait, how do you do this and how do you do that? And so it was kind of learning on the job, so to speak.
Yeah.
And Webflow's, I found it pretty easy.
Yeah.
It really was pretty intuitive. And we just kind of got better as we went.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that helped was, as you mentioned, kind of like having a component set so that there is sort of like a drag and drop. You can be like, yep, I need this, and maybe turn off a headline or turn on a headline. And, and then that way you sort of had, and we could have multiple people in there working, right? Because how many
Yeah.
pages did we migrate over in total?
Gosh, I can't even remember, but
I know we started off as about 500. And so, and there was, that was a mix of,
CMS.
yeah, CMS. And then I think probably another like 40 or 50 static pages and, things along those lines. Um, do you have a sense of like how many pages you authored? Because you were right there in the middle. Like I know you're not hands on now, but you wanted to make sure that you understood
Yeah.
the platform. So it wasn't just, this abstraction.
Yeah. I was very hands on during the process. Gosh, I don't even know how many I made. It was quite a few. I did learn one thing that I kind of recommendation for others. The one thing I learned as I was kind of creating some of the pages is that I wish I had thought through the components in the beginning a little bit more. Like we went through with your team and we said, these are a lot of the components we might need. Um, I think there were probably more components that I needed as I was authoring. And so maybe just spending more time on that, which, I didn't do until I got to the page and I was like, no, it would have been nice to have this component.
Yep.
And you could always build it later.
Sure.
But we were so time crunched that I ended up using, you know, different components that I knew I would change out later.
Yep.
But it was kind of fun to build the pages. Like I actually enjoyed that. It was very creative.
What'd you enjoy about it?
It just I think the creativity. I mean, I knew what the content was. I knew the copy and, images and just going in and, looking at the different components and looking at the different templates and just modifying it. It was, I don't know, it was just different from what I do on a daily basis.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I don't get to build for the web much, but then when I do, it's this nice, like sort of a crafting, sort of building blocks type of thing. Um, and yeah, and I think you're right. Like, sometimes it's like you can go and put around like, where are we doing the discovery? Are we doing everything up, front and then being able to have any possible variant of a component or which was our process. Like we were able to work in an agile fashion, have
Yeah.
a good 80% of what we needed up front and then chip away and be able to have, those updates along the way. So it wasn't necessarily, I mean, we were building this thing as we were moving. There's no question. You're
We
like,
were definitely, I mean, we would build a component and then I would say to your team in Slack, can we modify this slightly? Can we do this? And that's where we just, those last 2 weeks were a lot of
yeah.
modifications.
Yeah. But I just think that's amazing because what we didn't have to do was we didn't spend 2 months like creating all this documentation and then get into it and sign like, oh no, we can't. Once it's set, it's set. And
Yeah.
this theme of malleability of being able to be like, yep, hey, let's change this. Like, let's be able to react is so incredible. And I think it's just really like a testament to like we talk all the time around how to work quickly, be able to work in the browser and work with your customer. Like those are the sort of like three things there. And it's kind of great to hear it from you that like, yep, didn't have what you needed, but got everything that you needed, right? Where uh, we're okay, let's flip it back over. Let's get this update in. Let's, decouple this component, take this away. So did you, I know you're working with kind of like a lot of the components themselves. Would you make any new components? Did you, because I think that's the other thing is like making a component is just like, it's like sort of a group ungroup type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. The group ungroup thing, and we went through a whole, probably in the last week, we were kind of, before the launch, we were kind of playing with, um, ungrouping and changing colors.
Yep.
And I remember at one point, my designer was like, uh-oh, I think I broke everything because if you're not careful, you change the colors in one component and then
Yeah.
the component is used on other pages. And so anyway, it was one of those uh-oh moments and your team kind of came in and was like, okay, you can't do it that way. You do it this way. And so it was a learning process.
Yeah.
But and since launch, Michael, who's running the website now, is, creating other components and, you know,
Yeah.
he knows how to do all that. But we had some, a few uh-oh moments in the
Yeah.
last.
And what I think was great, so if you have that up oh moment, like all we did was just jump into the change log, and then we have a revision history so we can see like, oh, all right, well, let's go and we can roll back
Yeah.
20 minutes. I think we rolled back a little bit.
Yeah.
We were able to
Yeah.
recover anything that was needed and then just like kept moving on.
Yeah. I mean, that
Um,
was the thing is that you're not really gonna break this. You
yeah.
know, it's a few minutes of, oh, what did I do? And now I have to but you're not gonna break it.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of the counterpoint to the like being able to have flexibility, move quickly, but then also the confidence of if there is something that's because you've mentioned like not everything is going to go perfect and not everything goes perfectly in any marketing campaign, any kind of like
Nope.
technology program, whatever. But there's still the ability to undo, roll back.
Yeah.
Uh, and those oh moments don't become like oh no moments. It's just like a quick
Yeah.
Slack message away.
Yeah. Well, and we actually had that in a live situation the other day where we have a staging site and a production site,
Yep.
and we pushed something to production that we didn't want to, we didn't mean to, and so just kind of rolled it back and then reverted back to the old version, and um, so it's not the end of the world.
Exactly. Are you guys doing anything with so you guys are using Webflow Enterprise, so you've got like the roles and permissions and being able to have, multiple people that are building in there and things like that. You mentioned how to be able to roll back in case you push out something that messes up. Have you guys been doing anything with kind of like page branching or kind of how to so talk with me like what does that approval process and staging process look like?
Yeah, so again, I don't manage it now, but
Yeah.
I will say we do use the page branching because and we did that a lot in the last few weeks as we were building things because you can't have two people on the same page and in the builder mode or what now
Yeah.
I the design mode or it,
Designer, and then you can have multiple people in there in the builder mode. Yeah.
so we do go in and we do a page branch, and get that approved before we push it live. But in terms of the kind of the whole approval process, so we'll put something on staging, and if especially let's say we do because we've been working on some new animation on the homepage, we put it on staging. And actually, I think we now have a third site so that I don't know what we call it, but we put it on there. We send it out for review to depending on who the stakeholders are for any given page or area. And then they'll approve it. We do a lot of things in Asana. That's our project management tool. So get all the approvals, and then Michael and the team will then push it live to production once it's approved.
Awesome. And yeah, that sounds like you're able to go and get kind of those internal comments, approval, review, everything you need to do. Have the lawyers look at it, have the accountants look at it, like, get
Yep.
all of that and be able to push that out into the world.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's always, people go to the production site, the live site and go, we need to make this change or that change.
Yep.
And, some of it we just do live. We make changes live. We don't do everything on staging. Uh, but it
Yeah.
depends on,
Sometimes you're just like, yep,
yeah,
just to push it all the way through and you don't have to go through like the reviews or, anything.
exactly.
Thinking back, like what do you think would be, let's say 2 to 3 lessons that you would kind of want to remember or that someone else that's starting off this type of engagement would want to try to think about before, they got started. So what would that kind of mean for you?
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the big things that, because we knew we were launching in a very short time frame, we had a very kind of defined, like, this is what we think of as um, kind of our goal for go live. Like, it doesn't need to be perfect. And if you want a perfect site, it's going to take, a year or a long period of time. So we basically said, if we launch with these pages and this content, we're going to be happy. And we, set expectations with the stakeholders. And um, in the end, we actually launched with pretty much every page. Now we're going back and we kept a list. That's
Yep.
the other. Keep a list of anything that you want to change after launch.
Mm.
Uh, we had this whole laundry list of things that we wanted to change, and now we're slowly getting to all of them. But my biggest learning is the site doesn't have to be perfect. Um, Obviously that you want the navigation and the homepage, and there's certain critical pieces that you want to make sure is there. You want to make sure your redirects are in place, that everything is connecting. But just keep a list of all the things that you want to do after. Um, Making sure the integrations, and we had a lot of plugins with WordPress. So just, making sure that's all set and in place and that's all working properly, really critical.
Yeah.
Uh, and then the components is another thing that again, I wish I had maybe spent more time on. We can always build more components later, but um, maybe thinking through that a little bit more upfront.
Sure. Having a good sense of what are the types of building blocks and how you're going to use those, and it's starting to map that out, I know, a little bit more.
Yeah, but again, we were doing so much at once. We were doing the rebrand and
Yeah. Yeah.
then we were doing a product launch. So my team was still helping with the launch. So it was,
So managing a whole product launch and
yeah,
replatform and a rebrand and like those are three major things that were happening all at once.
it was a little crazy.
Yeah. But it's funny you mentioned like feeling like you didn't have to be perfect when it went launch. But I mean, I think what we launched was
It was,
pretty good. Like pretty. I'm not going to say it's perfect, but it's pretty close.
well, we actually, so when it was funny, we had said at one point we were going to keep a bunch of the pages that we didn't feel we needed to launch with. We were going to keep them on WordPress. And I can't remember, maybe it was 3 weeks or 4 weeks ahead of time. Michael, who's now running the website, came back and said, we can't keep those pages on WordPress. We have to move it over. And so it was one of those moments of, oh, we thought we could just launch with this much. Now we have to make sure we launch with this much. Um, and we did it. And there weren't, like I said, there weren't any major things that we missed. Again, it was just, would I have maybe done some different images or, updated, there are always things, but the site was in a pretty good place at launch.
Yeah. Oh, I think it was. I mean, again, looked fantastic. It was as designed, And I
Yeah.
think as marketers, we always want to do. There's always that sort of like, what next? What next? What next? What's the other sort of thing we want to test or start to look at? And I think having that list in the back, like, all right, what is going to be our priority one around, like,
Yep.
again, new product, new brand, new authoring platform, check, check, check. Um, as you're thinking about sort of like this, moving into the optimization and kind of growing this owned piece of media, how are you thinking about what you want to be able to do next?
Yeah, so I'm working really closely with Michael and team on that. So conversion optimization is a big one. You want to make sure that your site is generating leads, and so we're really looking at how do we do that? And we have a chat function, and we have kind of different CTAs. So really looking at that, testing different things, testing the content, testing CTAs, We're going to be testing some personalization on the website. So we use a tool called Mutiny. So we can actually, take the homepage, and if we're sending people that we know are certain industry, we can change the content. So I have a video, kind of a video team, and so we create different video, animation. I'm a big fan of making sure that we have as much engaging content as we can on the website. So continuing to build more interactivity, animation, video. And then I mentioned earlier, we have an SEO copywriter that's going to start soon. And so they can go through the site and really make sure that we're optimized um, across the whole site. So those are probably the big things. And then it's all the little things that we had not done at law. We want to just keep working on.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think being able to have sort of everyone come together under like around one table and not having to necessarily like jump between like 8 different things and then create documentation around what someone else should do or whatever, and have that sort of direct, control, so that the person that's running SEO, they can jump in and start, directly manipulating those pages based on the data that they're seeing.
Yes.
And yeah, and then, CRO, conversion rate optimization, is absolutely this. It's a new era. Like it's the ability to really, I think, act on a lot of what the promise of the web has been. Where, I mean, I've been doing web consulting for 25 years, and it was always like, you know, design, build, test, refine and launch. But that test and relaunch was sort of like, it was a laborious process, to say the least. Like, by the time you would have the data, being able to create a design to be able to get that back out into the world, that could sometimes take a long time. So it's just exciting that, now your team's able to, be able to think about that in, shorter increments, and have more direct control over that. And yeah, and Mutiny is a great tool. We've used that in the past. I imagine you guys were using that on your WordPress site, kind of way
We
back.
were, but not enough. Like we
Yeah,
didn't focus on it, but yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then, we've been using Webflow Optimize, which is great for what's great about that is like we wouldn't have to necessarily like copy embed codes around. So that's something I know that you and your
We're
team.
looking into maybe switching.
Yeah, yeah, I know. It's just to sort of throw it out there that like you can use a lot of these different tools, and there's different, because there's no shortage of Martech that's out there, and how to be able to kind of think about what's the best thing for the team and how are they going to work, and all those types of things.
Yes, exactly.
So, well, just as we're kind of wrapping up, like, are there any kind of things that we haven't covered off on today that you want to at least mention, or what are the kind of last thoughts you'd want to throw out there?
Um, I think so. Just for us, like if we take a step back and when we were looking at, okay, we're going to switch to Webflow. We knew we couldn't do it on our own. And so that's where we kind of came to you and your team, because we said, we don't have I mean, none of us had the knowledge of Webflow. We knew it was kind of a big um, undertaking along with everything else. And so just, getting a partner to really, and I really felt like we were one team. We had this common goal. Um, we kind of did a whole analysis of our needs and our, when we were kind of looking at switching over, we had all these plugins, and we also have two different languages. You're using Weglot. And so just working together to analyze, like, okay, how do we move over to Webflow and create a really good site with all the integrations? Do we want to use Weglot? Do we want to switch over to kind of the native translation tool, which I think we did, or we are switching over?
You are, yeah.
We
So you have,
are.
yeah.
That was a whole, so just working as a team together to just, you know, we all wanted to have the greatest site on the platform in this new brand. And so just, I think that's so important. We could not have done it on our own. and definitely not in 100 days or whatever it was.
Well,
So
that's
it
I
was
just want
fun.
to let you know how much that means to me and the rest of the team, and that is absolutely our gold standard around like what we want to be able to bring to every project. And I'd say the second thing of this is that while, you know, you had some time to be able to incubate this project with an agency like Edgar Allan, ultimately, like you guys were able to take control over this and like this is your platform now. And I think that's one of the things that I'm most excited and I want to congratulate you on is that your team has now full ownership of the site. You're making updates. Your team is working in there every single day. And, you know, if you have a question, obviously we're here to, you know, answer it or whatever, but it's a, it's not a have to have, and it's really around like just a natural way that your team is working. And so I want to congratulate your team for, and really like, and you, that's the thing that I just, you know, was really admired that you really took this leadership to show firsthand that like, you're like, I am not a web developer and I can develop in the web, right?
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, you set us up for success. Your team really, like I said, I had never been in Webflow, and I remember just getting in there the first time, and your team is like, "Okay, you do this and you do this." And like I said, I just asked a billion questions, and I think that's what I would also recommend to everyone: is don't be afraid to ask the questions, and just it you will learn it quickly. You know, you'll get up to speed, and you don't need to be a developer because I am not technical. I am not technical at all. And if I can do it, then anyone can do it. So
Yeah. Yeah. And you absolutely did. And I think you're right. Like, I think being comfortable to ask the questions, you know, doing that pre-work like you guys did around like, okay, you have all this stuff. I think that really helped to set us up so that we had some things to react to so that we could help to be that editor of effort, bring down like what are the five things we need to do, not the 500 things to be able to do. Keeping a, you know, list of everything you want to do after launch and knowing that the site's never going to be done. But
never, ever.
but we can still launch with something that's amazing, you know, and that's what you guys were able to do. And yeah, and then I think from there that it's about learning and kind of growing with your customer and just seeing like using the site as a way to interact with your customers and understand what they really want, which is the ultimate goal. Uh,
Yes. Yes,
So,
and also just getting feedback internally because, you know, there's so many, folks internally who are interacting with customers and prospects, and, so we have a whole web feedback channel on our
mm,
Slack, and so people can, you know, if they find an error or something that's not working, but also they can recommend things like, "Hey, what about this?" Or, you know, "We'd love a page on this," or, and so like you said, it's the website is never done.
yeah. Yeah.
Never
Well, I
done.
love that. Man, talk about cooks in the kitchen. Sounds like you have a whole Slack channel of cooks that are able to go and throw an order up and say, "Oh, I'd love to be able to see this," and I've got a customer that's asked me about this, and being able
Yeah.
to react and get those things up and up.
We don't have to listen to everything,
Yeah,
but
yeah. You can definitely have it out there.
yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Well, Jody, I just want to again thank you for coming on and sharing a bit of your story and the story of FloQast today. Also, just being an incredible like you and your team again, gold standard for how to be able to work together. Uh, I loved watching all the questions come through, all the collaboration, just sort of phonetic, you know, back and forth, and balancing what I think is like this perfect example of a rigorous approach but vigorous, you know,
Mhm.
and how to be able to like have that idea, be able to get out in the market, and then be able to kind of you know grow it within your own team.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mason, because it was just great working with your team, and we couldn't have done it without you. So it was a fun project.
It really was. Well, and I look forward to one day seeing you in person. You know, so
Definitely.
yeah, awesome. Well, yeah, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for everyone who joined us today. I'm sure there's probably some questions out there. Let's see. And yeah, so we will talk soon. So thanks so much, G. Okay.
Thanks, and
Okay. Bye.
bye.